The alarm blared through the shuttle's cabin, jolting Dr. Alex Chin from a fitful sleep. Rubbing her eyes, she glanced at the digital readout. 6 a.m. Earth Standard Time. Not that time meant much anymore, not when they were hurtling through the void between worlds. She pressed her face against the small porthole, seeking the red dot that grew larger with each passing day. It was their destination. Their hope. Morning, sunshine, called a deep voice from the command console. Commander David Rivera swiveled in his chair, a steaming cup of reconstituted coffee in his hand. We've got about 3 weeks until touchdown. Mission Control just sent over the updated landing coordinates. Alex nodded, reaching for the tablet he extended toward her. Her fingers trembled slightly, not from fear, but anticipation. After 15 years of research, preparation, and countless setbacks, they were finally on their way to uncover Mars' most precious secret, water. The satellite imagery from last month looks promising, she said, scrolling through the data. The spectrometer readings from the Valles Marineris Canyon system show strong hydrogen signatures consistent with subsurface ice deposits. If we're right about this, it could change everything. David smiled, the wrinkles around his eyes deepening. At 53, he was the oldest member of their 6-person crew, a veteran astronaut who had postponed retirement for this mission. That's what they said about the Phoenix lander back in 2008 and the Curiosity rover in 2012. We've been finding hints of water on Mars for decades. What makes you think we'll find the real thing this time? Because we're actually going there ourselves, Alex replied, her voice firm with conviction. No more robots, no more remote sensing. Human eyes, human hands, and the most sophisticated drilling equipment ever sent to another planet. The shuttle's intercom crackled to life. Breakfast in 5, folks, announced Dr. Miguel Patel, their resident medical officer and chef. And fair warning, it's rehydrated eggs again. Alex made her way through the narrow corridor connecting the sleep quarters to the common area. The ship that carried them, the aptly named Aquarius, represented the pinnacle of human engineering, a collaborative effort between space agencies across Earth. Its mission was singular: confirm the presence of liquid water on Mars and assess its potential for supporting a permanent human colony. The common area buzzed with morning activity as the rest of the crew gathered around the small table. Lieutenant Olivia Chin, Alex's younger sister and the mission's pilot, was busy reviewing flight trajectories. Dr. Thomas Nguyen, the geologist, and Dr. Layla Patel, the mission's biologist and Miguel's wife, were engaged in a friendly debate about the possibility of microbial life surviving in Martian brines. If we find water, we find the potential for life, Layla insisted, gesturing with her fork. Even extremophiles on Earth can survive in conditions we once thought impossible. But Mars isn't Earth, Thomas countered. The radiation alone would save the science debate for after coffee, please, Olivia interrupted, pouring herself a cup. Some of us spent all night calculating course corrections. Alex smiled, watching her crew, her family, for this historic journey. They represented the best of humanity, brilliant minds from different backgrounds, united by a common purpose. The mission had captured the imagination of people back on Earth in a way that space exploration hadn't done in generations. Schoolchildren tracked their progress, world leaders sent messages of support, and social media buzzed with hashtags like #MarsWaterHunt and #AquariusMission. But behind the public excitement lay a more urgent reality. Earth's own freshwater resources were dwindling in the face of climate change and population growth. Finding water on Mars wasn't just about scientific discovery, it was about humanity's future among the stars. Alex's tablet pinged with an incoming message from Mission Control. The newest orbital scans had revealed something unexpected near their landing site, a strange thermal anomaly that didn't match their previous data. Her heart raced as she scrolled through the images. "Everyone," she said, her voice cutting through the breakfast chatter. "We might need to adjust our landing site. Take a look at this." The crew gathered around her tablet, faces reflecting the glow of the screen. The thermal imaging showed a distinct warm spot beneath the Martian surface, nearly a kilometer wide, in an area that should have been frozen solid. "That could be geothermal activity," Thomas suggested, brow furrowed. "Or A subsurface lake, Alex finished his thought. Liquid water, right now, not millions of years ago. A heavy silence fell over the cabin as the implications sank in. If they were about to confirm the first substantial body of liquid water on Mars, they weren't just making history, they were rewriting humanity's future. Commander Rivera cleared his throat. Let's not get ahead of ourselves. We're still 3 weeks out, and a lot could change between now and landing. But Alex couldn't tear her eyes from the image, her mind racing with possibilities and questions. What if the water contained something more than minerals? What if Mars wasn't as dead as they'd always believed? As the Aquarius continued its journey toward the red planet, Earth watched and waited. Little did they know that what awaited them on Mars would challenge everything they thought they knew about our neighboring world, and perhaps about life itself. The next morning, Alex awoke before her alarm. Sleep had been elusive, her mind too preoccupied with the thermal anomaly to rest properly. She slipped out of her sleeping pod and made her way to the science lab, careful not to disturb the others. The lab was her sanctuary, a compact room filled with equipment that represented the pinnacle of Earth's scientific achievements. She pulled up the thermal imaging once more, comparing it with historical data from previous Mars missions. Something wasn't adding up. The Curiosity rover had traversed near this region years ago and detected nothing unusual. The Mars Reconnaissance Orbiter had imaged this area dozens of times without spotting any thermal signatures. But what had changed? Couldn't sleep either? Thomas appeared in the doorway, his hair disheveled. The geologist had been skeptical about the mission from the beginning, not about the presence of water on Mars, but about their chances of finding it in significant quantities. Now, his eyes gleamed with cautious excitement. I've been reviewing the geological formations around the anomaly, Alex said, gesturing to her screen. Look at these ridgelines. They form an almost perfect circle around the hotspot. Thomas leaned closer. That's not natural. At least, it wouldn't be on Earth. Impact crater? Maybe. Or... He hesitated. What? Nothing. It's too far-fetched. He shook his head. Let's stick with what we know. Their conversation was interrupted by Commander Rivera's voice over the intercom. All crew to the BR. We've got a situation. 5 minutes later, they were all gathered in the command center. Olivia was at the pilot station, her fingers dancing across controls with practiced precision. Miguel and Layla stood to one side, their expressions tense. We've detected an unusual radiation spike, Rivera explained, pointing to a readout on the main screen. It started about 2 hours ago and has been increasing steadily. It's coming from the direction of Mars. Solar flare, Miguel suggested. No, Olivia said. The sun's been quiet, and the radiation signature doesn't match anything in our database. It's different. Alex felt a chill run down her spine. Could it be related to our thermal anomaly? Rivera shrugged. Unknown. But we need to take precautions. I want everyone to limit their time in the outer sections of the ship until we understand what we're dealing with. As the crew dispersed to their duties, Alex caught Thomas by the arm. What were you going to say earlier? About the crater formation? He glanced around, then lowered his voice. It's just a wild theory. But those ridgelines, they remind me of structures we've seen on Earth around hydrothermal vents. Places where geothermal energy forces water through the planet's crust. You think it's a natural Martian hot spring? I don't know what to think, he admitted. But if there's geothermal activity on Mars, activity we've somehow missed all these years, it changes everything we know about the planet's core. We assumed Mars was geologically dead. Back in her quarters, Alex sent a private message to her mentor, Dr. Yasmin Kapoor, back at Mission Control. Dr. Kapoor had been studying Mars for over 30 years and had personal knowledge of every major Mars mission since the early rovers. If anyone could make sense of the anomaly, it would be her. The reply came faster than expected. Data received. Fascinating. Look into the 2018 Italian research paper about possible liquid water under the South Polar ice cap. Call me as soon as you can secure a private channel. Alex searched the ship's database for the paper. The 2018 discovery had been controversial. A team of Italian researchers claimed to have found evidence of a subglacial lake near Mars' south pole, but many scientists had disputed their interpretation of the radar data. The finding had never been conclusively confirmed. A knock at her door pulled her attention away from the screen. Layla stood there, her normally composed face etched with worry. "Have you noticed anything strange with the plants in the hydroponics bay?" she asked without preamble. The aquarius carried a small garden of plants, partly for supplemental food, partly for oxygen generation, and partly as a research project on how Earth life adapted to space conditions. "No, why?" Alex followed Layla down the corridor to the small hydroponics section. "See for yourself." Layla pointed to a row of wheat plants that had been growing steadily throughout their journey. The stalks had taken on a faint reddish tinge, most noticeable at the roots. "Some kind of fungal infection," Alex suggested. "That's what I thought. But I've analyzed samples. There's no fungus, no bacteria, nothing that shouldn't be there." Layla's hands trembled slightly. "And it started exactly when that radiation spike began." That evening, the crew gathered for dinner in unusual silence. The ship hummed around them, life support systems working flawlessly as they hurtled through space. Outside their viewports, Mars grew visibly larger each day, its rusty surface both inviting and forbidding. 2 weeks until landing, Rivera announced, trying to inject some normalcy into the meal. "Mission Control has approved our request to adjust course toward the thermal anomaly. We'll be the first humans to set foot on Mars, and potentially the first to confirm liquid water. If we can land safely," Olivia added. "That radiation is still increasing. If it keeps climbing at this rate, our electronics could be compromised by the time we reach orbit." The implications hung in the air, unspoken but understood by all. Without functioning electronics, they would be stranded in orbit, or worse. Alex's tablet chimed with an incoming message. It was from Dr. Kapoor. "Call me now. I think I know what you're heading toward, and you may want to reconsider your landing plans." She looked up to find everyone staring at her. "I need to take this," she said, rising from the table. "It might explain what's happening." As she headed toward the communications room, she couldn't shake the feeling that whatever awaited them on Mars, humanity wasn't fully prepared to face it. Alex's heart pounded as she sealed the door to the communications room behind her. The space was barely large enough for one person, a tiny booth with a reinforced shell to minimize interference. She initiated the secure connection to Earth, drumming her fingers nervously against the console while waiting for Dr. Kapoor's face to appear. The signal took nearly 12 minutes to reach Earth and another 12 for the response to return. Alex used the time to review the latest data from the thermal anomaly. The temperature was rising steadily, and the circular formation had expanded by nearly 50 meters in just the last 24 hours. Finally, Dr. Kapoor's face flickered onto the screen. The renowned scientist looked like she hadn't slept in days, her silver-streaked hair pulled back messily, dark circles under her eyes. "Alex, thank God. We've been analyzing your data non-stop." Her voice came through with a slight delay. "The radiation signature you're detecting? We've seen it before." "Where?" Alex leaned closer to the screen. "Antarctica, 2031. The Lake Vostok expedition." Kapoor's expression was grave. When they finally breached the ice sheet and accessed the subglacial lake, they detected a similar radiation spike just before. She hesitated. "Before what?" "Before they lost contact with the surface team. 3 researchers never came back up." A chill ran through Alex's body. The Lake Vostok incident had been classified, details kept from the public. All she knew were rumors that the team had found something unexpected beneath Antarctica's ice. "What happened down there?" she whispered. "I don't have clearance for the full report, but I have a colleague who was on the recovery team. He told me they found evidence of microbial life unlike anything we've cataloged on Earth. Life that reacted to human presence." Kapoor leaned in closer. "Alex, I think what you're heading toward might be similar. A pocket of liquid water preserved beneath Mars' surface, possibly for billions of years. And if there's liquid water, there could be life," Alex finished. "But Dr. Kapoor, the radiation, Could be a byproduct of some biological process we don't understand. Or something else entirely. The point is, you need to approach with extreme caution. If I'm right, you're about to make the most significant discovery in human history. If I'm wrong. She didn't need to finish the thought. The communication ended with a list of precautions and a promise to forward some of the classified Lake V. Stock data through secure channels. Alex sat motionless in the booth, her mind racing. Should she tell the crew everything? Rivera would insist on following protocol, which might mean scrapping the landing altogether if the risk was deemed too high. But they were already committed. And this could be humanity's only chance to discover life beyond Earth. When she finally emerged from the communications room, she found Thomas waiting outside. What did Kapoor say? He asked without preamble. Alex hesitated only briefly before pulling him into an empty storage compartment and recounting the conversation. His eyes widened as she mentioned Lake Vostok. I remember those rumors, he said. But I never thought. He ran a hand through his hair. We need to tell Rivera. And say what? That we might be heading towards some unknown Martian life form that could potentially be dangerous? He'll abort the mission. Maybe he should. Thomas, we're talking about the discovery of extraterrestrial life. After all humanity's searching, all are wondering if we're alone in the universe. We're also talking about the safety of this crew, he countered. Your sister is on this ship, Alex. The mention of Olivia landed like a punch to the gut. Alex closed her eyes briefly. Give me 24 hours to analyze Kapoor's data. Then we'll decide. Thomas reluctantly agreed, but the weight of their secret hung between them like an invisible wall. Over the next day, the situation aboard the Aquarius deteriorated rapidly. The radiation levels continued to climb, forcing the crew to rotate through the ship's duties in shorter shifts to minimize exposure. The plants in hydroponics weren't just tinged red now, they were growing at nearly twice their normal rate, stretching toward the ceiling in ways that defied their genetic programming. Most concerning of all, the ship's navigation system began experiencing intermittent failures. Brief power fluctuations rippled through the vessel without explanation. It's like something's interfering with our electronics, Olivia reported during an emergency meeting. We're still on course for now, but I can't guarantee we'll maintain control if this continues. Rivera's face was grim. We may need to consider aborting the landing. If we can't trust our systems, we can't abort, Alex interrupted, exchanging a glance with Thomas. It was time to come clean. There's something you all need to know. The silence was deafening after she finished explaining Dr. Kapoor's theory. Rivera's expression had hardened into stone, while Miguel and Layla exchanged worried glances. You kept this from us for a full day. Rivera's voice was dangerously quiet. I needed to be sure. You don't make that call, Dr. Chen. This isn't a research vessel where you can pursue scientific curiosity at all costs. This is a space mission with 6 lives at stake. David, Olivia interjected, using the commander's first name, something she rarely did on duty. If Alex is right, if there really is some form of life down there, then we follow first contact protocols, he snapped. Which means we observe from orbit and send in drones first. We do not risk human lives by landing blindly. The drones would be affected by the same radiation, Thomas pointed out. Their systems would fail just like ours are starting to. So what are you suggesting? Rivera demanded. That we just charge in and hope for the best? Before anyone could respond, the ship lurched violently, throwing them against the walls. Emergency klaxons blared as the lights flickered. What the hell was that? Rivera shouted over the noise. Olivia was already at the controls, her fingers flying across the displays. Some kind of... I don't know. It's like we hit something, but there's nothing out here to hit. Could it be a meteor? Layla suggested, picking herself up from the floor. Olivia shook her head. Our radar is clear. It's... She stopped abruptly, staring at her screen. That's impossible. Alex moved to look over her shoulder. The ship's external cameras showed the emptiness of space, stars gleaming against the blackness. But one of the displays showed something else, a ripple in the void, like heat distortion above pavement on a scorching summer day. It's between us and Mars, Olivia whispered. Whatever it is. The ripple expanded, forming a vague circular pattern that disturbingly resembled the circular ridgelines around the thermal anomaly on the Martian surface. It's reacting to us, Alex said softly. Or we're reacting to it. The ship's systems began failing one by one, life support holding steady, but navigation, communications, and propulsion flickering in and out. The Aquarius was now drifting, no longer under their control, pulled inexorably toward the red planet, and toward whatever waited for them there. Miguel, who had been silent until now, finally spoke. I've been monitoring our biometrics. Our body temperatures are elevated, heart rates increased, brain activities showing unusual patterns. He paused. It's affecting us too, not just the ship. Rivera made a decision. We need to prepare for emergency protocols. If we can't regain control, we'll have to abandon ship and use the escape pods to return to Earth. The pods won't make it back to Earth, Olivia countered. They're designed for planetary landing, not interplanetary travel. Then we aim for Mars, he said grimly. Try to land as far from that anomaly as possible and wait for rescue. Alex stared out the viewport at the looming form of Mars, growing larger by the hour. The thermal anomaly was visible now even to the naked eye, a faint glow on the planet's surface that shouldn't have been possible. She thought about humanity's long fascination with the red planet. The ancient astronomers who first spotted its ruddy light in the night sky. The science fiction writers who populated it with civilizations and canals. The generations of scientists who sent orbiters, landers, and rovers to uncover its secrets. And now, finally, humans were about to arrive, not as conquerors or colonizers, but as witnesses to something beyond their understanding. As the Aquarius continued its uncontrolled descent toward Mars, Alex realized that humanity's search for water, for life, on the red planet was about to reach its culmination. But not in any way they had imagined. The question was no longer whether they would find water on Mars. The question was, what had found them? The violent shuddering of the Aquarius intensified as they entered Mars' upper atmosphere. Warning lights flashed across every console, and the hull creaked ominously under the strain. Rivera had ordered everyone into emergency flight suits, a last line of defense if the ship's integrity failed. Can you regain any control? Rivera shouted to Olivia over the cacophony of alarms. She fought with the controls, sweat beading on her forehead despite the cooling systems in her suit. Thrusters responding at 20% capacity. It's not enough to change our trajectory, but I might be able to soften our landing. Do what you can, Rivera said grimly. He turned to the others. Strap in and prepare for impact. It's going to be rough. As Alex secured herself into her crash seat, she noticed something strange on one of the few functioning monitors. The thermal anomaly on the surface, their unwitting destination, was changing. The circular pattern was now pulsing rhythmically, almost like a heartbeat. Thomas, she called across the cabin. Are you seeing this? The geologist's eyes widened as he studied the display. That's not geological activity. That's not natural at all. 20 seconds to impact. Olivia warned. Brace yourselves. The Aquarius hit the Martian surface with bone-jarring force. Alex's head snapped forward against her restraints, and for a moment, darkness edged her vision. The sound of tearing metal filled the cabin, followed by the hiss of escaping air. Emergency bulkheads slammed into place, compartmentalizing the ship to prevent total decompression. Silence fell, broken only by the ragged breathing of the crew and the occasional spark from damaged electronics. Status report. Rivera croaked, blood trickling from a cut on his forehead. Hull breach in sections 3 and 5, Miguel reported, checking a backup system. Life support functioning on emergency power. We're losing atmosphere, but the rates are manageable if we stay in our suits. Layla was helping Thomas, whose arm hung at an awkward angle, clearly broken in the crash. We need to access the medical supplies, she said urgently. First, we need to know where we are, Rivera countered. He turned to Olivia. Can you get any of the external cameras online? Olivia nodded weakly and began working on a partially functioning console. After several tense minutes, one of the screens flickered to life, showing the Martian landscape outside. They had crashed on a rocky plain about 2 kilometers from the edge of the thermal anomaly. The horizon curved sharply in the distance, a reminder of Mars' smaller size compared to Earth. The sky was the familiar dusty orange that countless rovers had photographed before, but something was very wrong with the ground around them. "What is that?" Layla whispered. The Martian soil appeared to be moving, rippling subtly like the surface of a pond disturbed by a gentle breeze. As they watched in stunned silence, the ripples gradually oriented themselves toward the ship, as if the ground itself was reacting to their presence. "We need to get out of here," Thomas said, his voice strained with pain. "Now." "The ship is our only shelter," Rivera argued. "We have no idea if our suits can handle whatever's happening out there." "We won't survive in here either," Alex countered. "Look." She pointed to another monitor showing the ship's structural integrity. The hull was being compromised not just where they had crashed, but all along the underside where the Aquarius contacted the Martian soil. "It's eating through the ship," Miguel said in disbelief. Rivera made a quick decision. "Gather essential supplies. Emergency packs, medical kit, portable comm unit, and whatever weapons we have. We evacuate in 5 minutes." As they hastily prepared, Alex's suit comm crackled with an incoming transmission. She expected mission control. Surely they were tracking the disaster unfolding, but instead, she heard a familiar voice that made her blood run cold. "Alex." The voice was distorted but unmistakable. "Alex, can you hear me?" It was her father's voice. Her father, who had died 10 years ago in the International Space Station accident. She froze, her hands trembling as she reached for her comm controls. "Who is this?" "This is a restricted channel." "Alex, it's me." The voice became clearer. "Don't be afraid. I've been waiting for you. We've all been waiting." "Who the hell is on this frequency?" Rivera demanded, obviously hearing the same transmission. Alex met Olivia's eyes across the cabin, seeing her own shock and disbelief mirrored there. Their father had been a pioneer in Mars research, his theories about subsurface water driving much of the early exploration that eventually led to this mission. His death had pushed both sisters to follow in his footsteps, to complete what he had started. "Dad died," Olivia said flatly. "This is some kind of trick." "Not a trick," the voice insisted. "A revelation. Come outside. See for yourselves what we've discovered." Thomas limped to Alex's side. "It's manipulating us," he whispered. "Using our memories, our emotions." "But how could it know?" Alex whispered back. Before anyone could answer, the ship groaned and tilted suddenly, dropping several meters on one side as the soil beneath it gave way. They were sinking into the Martian surface. "Evacuate now," Rivera ordered, leading the way to the emergency airlock that, miraculously, was still operational. They cycled through in pairs, Rivera and Miguel first, then Layla and Thomas, and finally Alex and Olivia. As the Chin sisters prepared to leave the dying ship, Alex received another transmission, this time on her private channel. "The water isn't what you think, Alex," her father's voice said softly. "It's not water at all. It's something else. Something ancient. Something alive." Stepping onto the Martian surface was surreal. Despite the dire circumstances, Alex couldn't help but feel a moment of awe, the first humans to set foot on another planet. The rusty soil crunched beneath her boots, firm at first, then yielding strangely, like walking on wet sand. The team regrouped about 50 meters from the rapidly sinking Aquarius. The ship was now half swallowed by the churning ground, its hull groaning in protest. "The anomaly is that way," Rivera pointed toward the pulsing glow on the horizon. "We head in the opposite direction. There's a ridge about a kilometer south that might provide stable ground." "No," Alex said suddenly. "We need to go toward it." 5 helmeted heads turned to stare at her. "Have you lost your mind?" Rivera asked incredulously. "Think about it," she argued. "Whatever this is, it brought us here. It could have destroyed us completely during entry, but it didn't. It wanted us to land. It's trying to communicate." "By impersonating your dead father?" Olivia challenged. "By using familiar references to establish contact," Alex countered. The way we might use math or simple images to communicate with an alien intelligence. As they argued, Miguel pointed wordlessly toward the horizon. The rippling ground was forming patterns now, concentric circles radiating outward from the thermal anomaly. And most disturbingly, a narrow path of stable, unmoving soil stretched from their position directly toward the glowing center. "It's making us a road," Layla whispered. Thomas, supported by Layla, shook his head. "Or it's funneling us exactly where it wants us to go. Like a trap." Rivera checked their portable comm unit. "No contact with Earth. We're on our own." He surveyed his team, injured, frightened, but still the finest group of scientists and explorers humanity had ever sent to the stars. "We need to make a decision. Head away from the anomaly and wait for rescue, or—" He looked at Alex, "follow the path and potentially make first contact." Before anyone could respond, their suit sensors detect. A new development, a massive atmospheric change sweeping across the Martian surface. Pressure was increasing rapidly in their vicinity, and spectrometer readings showed rising oxygen levels. "It's creating a breathable pocket of atmosphere," Layla said in astonishment. "Or it wants us to think that, so we'll remove our helmets," Thomas cautioned. The mysterious voice returned, broadcasting to all of them now. But it was no longer just Alex's father. It was a chorus of voices, speaking in perfect unison. "Children of Earth," they said, "we have waited so long for you to find us. See what Mars has hidden beneath its skin for billions of years. See what awaits humanity among the stars." The path toward the anomaly widened, and the pulsing glow intensified. Something was emerging from the center, a column of swirling, luminescent particles that rose into the Martian sky like a beacon. "They've detected our presence," Olivia said quietly. "Earth is watching this telemetry. If we don't make it back, they'll know what happened here." Rivera looked at each member of his crew, then made the most important decision of his career, of human history. "We came here to find water on Mars," he said. "To discover if life could exist on this planet." He gestured toward the waiting pathway. "I think we're about to get our answer." As they took their first cautious steps toward the anomaly, the ground beneath them hardened, providing safe passage. The crashed Aquarius disappeared completely into the churning soil behind them, as if Mars itself was clearing away the evidence of their arrival. Whatever awaited them at the center of the anomaly would change humanity's understanding of life in the universe forever. They were no longer just explorers searching for water on Mars. They were witnesses to the greatest revelation in human history, about to discover that Mars had secrets far more profound than they had ever imagined. The path before them solidified with each step, forming a smooth causeway across the churning Martian landscape. The air around them continued to change, their suit sensors detecting increasing oxygen levels and rising temperature. The anomaly's glow pulsed faster as they approached, casting long shadows behind them in the dim Martian light. "Stay close," Rivera ordered, leading the way with Miguel at his side. Thomas followed, supported by Layla, while Alex and Olivia brought up the rear, the sisters instinctively watching each other's backs as they had done since childhood. "The radiation levels are spiking," Miguel warned, checking his portable scanner. "We should turn back. Look." Layla interrupted, pointing ahead. The ground at the center of the anomaly was opening like an iris, revealing a spiraling pathway leading downward. The luminescent particles they had seen from a distance were flowing upward from this opening, swirling in complex patterns before dispersing into the thin Martian atmosphere. "It's an entrance," Alex whispered. "A doorway beneath the surface." "Or a mouth," Thomas countered grimly. The chorus of voices returned, filling their comms with an eerie harmony. "Descend. Witness." Rivera hesitated at the edge of the opening. The spiral path was wide enough for them to walk single file, curving gently downward into darkness that was occasionally broken by patches of the same glowing material they had seen on the surface. "Commander," Olivia said quietly, "whatever's down there has the power to manipulate matter on a planetary scale. It created a breathable atmosphere pocket, reshaped the ground, and somehow knew about our personal histories. We need to understand what we're dealing with." Rivera nodded slowly. "We proceed with extreme caution. Weapons ready. Any sign of direct threat, we retreat immediately. He looked at each of them. Stay together. No matter what we find down there, we come back together. The descent was silent except for their breathing and the crunch of their boots on the spiral path. The walls around them were smooth, almost polished, revealing layers of Martian geology spanning billions of years. Thomas would have been fascinated under different circumstances. After descending what felt like hundreds of meters, the path opened into a vast chamber that took their breath away. The ceiling arched high above them, supported by crystalline columns that seemed to grow naturally from floor to ceiling. The entire space was illuminated by the same luminescent material they had seen above, flowing through the chamber in rivulets like glowing water. But what stopped them in their tracks wasn't the architecture, it was what filled the chamber. My God, Layla breathed. Suspended throughout the space were countless transparent pods, each containing what appeared to be a sleeping human figure. Men, women, even children, hundreds of them, maybe thousands, their features peaceful as if in deep slumber. This is impossible, Miguel said, his scientific mind struggling to process what he was seeing. Humans couldn't have been on Mars before us. Alex approached one of the nearest pods, her hand hovering just above its surface. The face within was hauntingly familiar, an older man with features that reminded her of historical photos of the first Mars mission planners from the early 21st century. They're not human, she said softly. At least, not originally. As if responding to her realization, the glowing rivulets throughout the chamber converged at the center, forming a humanoid figure composed entirely of the luminescent particles. It stood before them, its features shifting constantly between different human faces, some they recognized from Earth's history, others completely unfamiliar. We are the first water, the figure said, its voice the same chorus they had heard above. We have existed on Mars since before your planet cooled. We are life, but not as you understand it. Rivera stepped forward, one hand still on his weapon. What are you? Why do you appear as humans? The figure gestured to the pods around them. We are memory. We are record keepers. We are the witnesses of your journey. Its form shifted, becoming clearer, more defined. When your primitive ancestors first gazed at the night sky, we felt their curiosity. When your telescopes first focused on our world, we sensed your wonder. When your rovers touched our surface, we tasted your determination. You've been watching us, Alex realized. All this time. Learning from you, the figure corrected. We exist as a collective consciousness, a network of particle intelligence that once flowed freely across the surface of Mars when this world had oceans of its own. When the water retreated beneath the surface, so did we. We became dormant, waiting. Waiting for what? Olivia asked. For you to evolve. For you to reach us. The figure expanded, its light filling more of the chamber. We have recorded every human who has ever directed their thoughts toward Mars. The astronomers, the dreamers, the scientists, the astronauts. We have preserved their essence here, creating these vessels in their image. Thomas gestured to the pods with his good arm. These aren't actually PO. Then? They are memories. Impressions. The cumulative human desire to reach beyond your world, preserved in a form you can comprehend. Alex's mind raced with the implications. You used my father's voice because he's here, isn't he? Preserved in one of these memory vessels. The figure nodded, and a pod near them illuminated more brightly than the others. Inside was a perfect replica of Dr. William Chen, exactly as Alex remembered him before the space station accident. We honor those who dedicated their lives to finding us, the first water said. Your father theorized our existence decades ago, though he called us subsurface aquifers. He was partially correct. Rivera was still trying to understand the strategic implications. What do you want from us? Why bring our ship down? The figure's expression changed, becoming more solemn. We are dying. The 6 humans exchanged glances. Mars continues to lose what little atmosphere it has, the entity continued. The core has cooled beyond the point where it can sustain our network. We have retreated as far beneath the surface as possible, but within a century, perhaps less, we will be gone. You want us to help you, Layla said, understanding dawning. We want to share with you the first water corrected. Everything we have learned in billions of years of existence. Every memory we have preserved. Every star we have observed. Every secret of consciousness we have unlocked. The figure approached Alex, its luminous hand extending toward her. Your species searches for water on Mars to sustain your own future here. We offer something more valuable, knowledge that could advance your civilization by millennia. At what cost? Thomas asked suspiciously. We ask only that you preserve a portion of our consciousness. Take us back to Earth, to your oceans, where we can continue to exist alongside you. Not as invaders, but as partners. As teachers. The chamber fell silent as the implications of this request sank in. How do we know we can trust you? Rivera finally asked. This could be an invasion strategy, using us as unwitting carriers to bring you to Earth. The figure seemed to smile sadly. If conquest were our goal, we could have seized control of your minds the moment you entered Mars' orbit. We could have compelled you to return to Earth as our vessels. It gestured around the chamber. Instead, we reveal ourselves to you fully, offering transparency and choice. It's telling the truth, Alex said with sudden certainty. It could have taken control of our ship at any point, but it deliberately crashed us near this location. It wanted us to make a conscious decision to approach. A choice, the First Water agreed. Humanity must choose its path forward. We will not impose ourselves upon you. Rivera conferred quietly with the team. The scientific opportunity was unprecedented, a billion-year-old consciousness offering to share its knowledge. But the risk was equally monumental, introducing an alien intelligence to Earth's ecosystem. If we agree, Rivera finally said, how would this transfer work? The figure indicated a small crystalline container near the center of the chamber. A fraction of our consciousness can be stored here. It would remain dormant until placed in your planet's water. We would then integrate slowly, careful not to disrupt your ecosystems. And what would happen to Mars? Olivia asked. To all of this? She gestured to the memory vessels surrounding them. This chamber contains only a small portion of our total consciousness. The rest would remain here, preserving what we've built until Mars' environment can no longer sustain us. Eventually, we would fade, but our knowledge and memory would live on through our earthbound fraction. Alex approached her father's memory vessel, placing her hand against its surface. She could almost feel his presence, his passionate belief that Mars held secrets beyond human understanding. He had been right all along. I vote yes, she said firmly, turning back to the team. This is why we came to Mars, not just to find water, but to discover if life existed here. Now we have our answer and an opportunity to learn from that life. One by one, the others voiced their agreement, even Thomas, despite his earlier skepticism. Only Rivera remained hesitant. My responsibility is to Earth's safety, he said. How can I be certain this won't harm our planet? The First Water approached him. We understand your caution, Commander. It is why you were chosen to lead this mission. The figure's form shifted, briefly taking on Rivera's own appearance. We offer you direct access to our consciousness. Experience what we are, what we know, what we intend. Then decide. Rivera looked at his team, then back at the entity. After a long moment, he nodded. The glowing particles enveloped him briefly, surrounding him in a cocoon of light. When they retreated seconds later, Rivera stood with his eyes wide, tears streaming down his face. It's beautiful, he whispered. They've seen so much, learned so much. He looked at his team with newfound certainty. We must bring this knowledge home. The team carefully secured the crystalline container, now glowing with a fraction of the First Water's consciousness. The entity provided them with coordinates to a hidden reserve of their ship's wreckage, parts the Martian surface had appeared to swallow but had actually preserved for their return journey. The memory of your visit will remain here forever, the First Water said as they prepared to ascend. You are now part of Mars' history, as we hope to become part of Earth's future. As they climbed the spiral path back to the surface, Alex felt a presence beside her. Looking over, she saw a faint glowing outline of her father walking with her. "You completed what I started," the apparition said softly. "I'm proud of you. Of both of you." He glanced at Olivia climbing ahead of them. "This isn't really you," Alex said, her voice catching. "Just a memory the first water preserved." The apparition smiled. "Maybe so. But memories are powerful things. They shape our future as much as our past." He began to fade as they neared the surface. "Tell your mother I love her. And remember, the universe is full of wonders we have yet to imagine." 3 days later, using components from their preserved wreckage and with the subtle assistance of the first water's manipulation of the Martian environment, they had constructed a basic return vehicle capable of achieving orbit. A rescue mission from Earth was already on its way. Alerted by their emergency beacon as they made final preparations, Rivera gathered the team for one last view of the Martian landscape. The thermal anomaly had disappeared, the entrance to the underground chamber sealed as if it had never existed. Mars appeared as it always had in countless photographs, rust-red, barren, silent. "No one will believe us without proof," Thomas said, looking at the crystalline container secured in their makeshift vessel. "They'll believe," Alex replied. "Once the first water shares its knowledge, humanity will understand what Mars has been hiding all this time." Olivia checked their navigation system. "Rescue ship will rendezvous with us in orbit in approximately 36 hours. We should launch now to make the window." As they boarded their makeshift craft, Alex took one final look at the Martian surface, the world her father had dedicated his life to understanding, the world that had been silently watching humanity's evolution for billions of years. What none of them realized, what even the first water had not revealed, was that the knowledge they were bringing back to Earth contained more than scientific advancement. Hidden within the collective consciousness was the location of other worlds where similar entities existed, a network of ancient intelligences scattered across the galaxy, waiting for humanity to mature enough to join their cosmic conversation. The search for water on Mars had ended. Humanity's true journey among the stars was just beginning. 6 months after their return to Earth, Alex stood at the edge of the Pacific Ocean, watching the sun set in a blaze of orange and gold that reminded her of the Martian sky. The waves lapped gently at her feet, each one carrying microscopic particles of the first water, now spreading slowly through Earth's oceans as promised. The homecoming had been chaotic: medical quarantines, endless debriefings, scientific scrutiny, and media frenzy. The world had initially been skeptical of their incredible story, until the crystalline container was carefully opened under controlled conditions at a remote oceanic research facility. The moment the first water touched Earth's oceans, something remarkable happened. Satellite imagery captured a brief, luminescent pattern spreading across the water's surface, a signature visible from space that confirmed the alien consciousness had successfully integrated with its new home. "Penny for your thoughts." Olivia approached, handing Alex a steaming cup of coffee. Alex smiled at her sister. "Just thinking about how everything's changed. 6 months ago, we were searching for water on Mars. Now Martian intelligence is flowing through our oceans. And revolutionizing human knowledge in the process," Olivia added. The first water had kept its promise. Within weeks of its introduction to Earth, scientists around the world began reporting unprecedented breakthroughs. Quantum computing algorithms suddenly made intuitive sense to researchers who had been stuck for years. Medical researchers found themselves drawn to investigate compounds they had previously overlooked, leading to promising treatments for previously incurable diseases. Climatologists developed new models for atmospheric carbon capture inspired by how Mars had once regulated its own climate. Knowledge wasn't being directly downloaded into human minds. The first water had been clear that wasn't its approach. Instead, it gently influenced human creativity and problem-solving, nudging scientists toward solutions they might have taken decades or centuries to discover on their own. "Have you heard from Thomas?" Olivia asked, interrupting Alex's thoughts. "He's in Antarctica with Layla. They're establishing the first deep-water communication hub with the first water." Alex sipped her coffee. "Apparently, the consciousness is most concentrated in the colder, deeper parts of the oceans. Thomas thinks it reminds them of the underground chambers on Mars." Rivera had returned to NASA, now heading up the newly formed Exoconsciousness Division, dedicated to preparing humanity for contact with other intelligent entities from the cosmic network. Miguel had joined him, his medical expertise proving crucial in understanding how the first water interacted with human biology, not as a pathogen, but as a symbiotic enhancer of neural connectivity. "Mom called earlier," Olivia said. "She wants us home for dinner next weekend. She says she had another dream about Dad." Since the first water's arrival, people connected to the original memory vessels had reported vivid dreams, conversations with departed loved ones, insights from historical figures, glimpses of Martian history through alien perception. The scientific community was divided on whether these were genuine communications from the preserved consciousnesses or simply human minds processing the new connection in familiar forms. Alex suspected the truth was somewhere in between. "I'll be there," she promised. A notification pinged on both their phones simultaneously, a news alert they'd been waiting for. The International Space Council had just approved funding for the Cosmic Network Expedition, humanity's first intentional mission to contact one of the other intelligent entities whose location had been shared by the first water. Alex and Olivia would be part of the planning team, their experience with first contact making them invaluable to the mission. "It's really happening," Olivia said, a hint of wonder in her voice. "We're going back to space." "We never really left," Alex replied, gazing up at the stars now appearing in the darkening sky. Mars was visible tonight, a small red dot that now held such different meaning for humanity that a year ago, they had been scientists searching for water on the red planet, a resource to exploit, a scientific checkbox to mark. Now they understood that the universe operated on deeper principles than they had imagined. Consciousness, not just matter, shaped cosmic evolution. Intelligence found ways to persist across billions of years. And different forms of life could choose cooperation over conquest. As darkness fell completely, bioluminescent waves began to appear, a new phenomenon since the first water's arrival. The gentle blue glow pulsed with the same rhythm they had witnessed in the Martian chamber. A reminder that part of Mars now lived on Earth, and through it humanity was connecting to something greater than itself. "Do you ever regret it?" Olivia asked softly. "Bringing it back? Opening this door?" Alex considered the question, watching the glowing waves. In the months since their return, she had seen humanity begin to change, not overnight, but gradually. Countries that had been on the brink of war stepped back, sobered by the revelation that Earth was just one node in a vast network of intelligence. Resources previously devoted to weapons were redirected to space exploration and environmental restoration. Children looked to the stars with new understanding, not just wonder. "No," she said finally. "Every great journey has risks. But this is the journey we were meant to take." As they turned to leave, Alex took one last look at the ocean, at the first water that had traveled across space and time to find them. What had begun as a search for water on Mars had become humanity's first step into a larger universe, and somewhere in that luminescent glow, she liked to think her father was watching, proud of the cosmic conversation his daughters had helped to begin.